So for your next presentation, I'm Joy Moore, and they invited a seminary professor of preaching to come up and talk. So I'm just warning you, and I see a lot of you are going to vacate the room on that, so that's all right. I want to talk to you. Oh, I don't have a clicker. Are you guys going to click? Aha, thank you. Alrighty. So I'm going to talk to you for a little bit this afternoon about ancient words in a virtual reality, or basically a way to think about the Bible not as some type of place to do a Google.com search to find answers. So storytelling is what we do. But what are the stories that you're telling and why? Heads of state have to convince everyone that their ideas are right, and so they tell stories. The tales are spun with advisors and trusted members of their inner courts, and then they're edited according to the opinions of their constituents, donors, and too often public opinion. And these reports frame the identity of those that govern and those whom they govern. Now, these tales are not merely the 3,500 commercial messages that have sought our imagination, from the billboards to pop-ups on our Facebook page. Our minds are coerced and captivated by partisan politics, commercial promotion, and the songs we receive in through earbuds into our minds. These stories become the testimony of what we believe to be true and just, and what is worth sustaining. So I want to begin by telling us that we are not the labels placed on us. We are the stories we tell ourselves. In other words, the story we constantly tell ourselves and others form the answers to, who am I? How do I fit in the world around me? This is actually the kind of narrative that you read when you read Suzanne Collins' Hunger Games, or Veronica Roth's Divergent, or J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter. A discerning reader resists being captivated by either the dystopian tragedy or the futuristic glamour. Behind the violence, the manipulation, the pageantry, each of these characters engage the age-old question of identity formation, civil disobedience, and moral judgment. Peter's quest to hold to his moral values with integrity. For's refusal to be limited to a single element of his identity. And Harry Potter's decision to choose love and friendship rather than fear and death. They all illustrate adolescent development and adult assimilation. And not unlike the ancient tales of the past, our contemporary sound bites, the pressure toward political correctness makes for great drama. These stories are not about telling us to stop doing something. They're actually telling us what's actually happening right now in our 21st century reality. It encourages us to recognize the dangers of the world that we live in and to decide to live our lives differently. Revisit with me the capital city. Its 12 districts have been defeated, invaded, and now exploited, always to pacify the inflated ego of the head of state. The exilic circumstances questions their humanity, undermines their productivity, and jeopardizes the entire society. Once they've been conquered, the people must be reminded that all that they have is whatever the state allows, nothing else. The heads of state first seize their possessions and then demand that their youth serve at the pleasure of the capital city. But wait, this is not the creation of Suzanne Collins. This is an older tale, a story that was told generation after generation to the ancient people of Israel long after their Babylonian exile. It's a story that Jesus and his disciples would have grown up with, a story told as a call to political resistance whenever the state asked the people of God to ignore what the Lord requires. It's the story of 3 Hebrew boys on an ethnic scholarship to Babylonian University. If you don't recognize that, go home and read the book of Daniel. So why do you tell the stories that you tell? Pay attention. In contemporary narratives and in the ancient biblical witness, young people are always enlisted as the tools of the power-hungry government and self-centered adults to create a new world, a world that denies the sovereignty of God. Whether coerced to bow down to the next Babylonian idol, or requiring a highly competitive initiation designed to fit you into some category that limits your identity to a single portion of your humanity, these stories expect you to choose between the knowledge of good and evil rather than a relationship with the God made known in Jesus Christ. Now that means we Christians have a problem, because we don't even know who Shadrach, Meshach, and a bad Negro. Okay, wait a minute. I don't teach Hebrew, I teach preaching. We don't even know who Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are because Hollywood hasn't made a movie about it. We have the greatest story on earth, and we prefer to allow Hollywood to tell us our stories instead of reading what has been given to us by the creator of the universe. Like King Saul consulting the ancient equivalent of horoscopes, we prefer a quick fix from MSNBC talking heads, Fox News sound bites, or CNN live stream rather than the slow and steady practice of reading and rereading the story of the called out people of God. More than any other generation in modern history, we are a generation whose imagination has not been shaped by the biblical narrative. I know that there's some things that we recognize, but many of your friends have never heard the original version of Noah. You do know that that's older than Russell Crowe, that it's in the Bible. In our box office hit single downloadable media world, the people of the book have forgotten how to read. And unfortunately, our world has taught us to throw away parts of the narrative as if they belong to the other guys. And we miss the drama that is unfolding over and over again. If we know the story of God, we will recognize that when you watch the U.S. news commentators, they say this is what's important right now. Unrest in the Persian Gulf area, war, famine, flood, earthquakes, economic collapse, social unrest, mistreatment of the elderly, incest, bribery, and inhumane systems of capture and imprisonment. Now, I think somebody has hijacked the teleprompters for CNN News and uploaded the story of ancient Israel before they were exiled to Babylon. But most of us don't even recognize that the things that are tearing our world around are the very things that have torn the world around ever since Adam and Eve ate themselves out of house and home. Ours is the greatest story ever told, and a good story longs to be retold over and over again until we see scenes from that story in every encounter, and every choice we make is born out of knowing that story, until our imaginations are so shaped that our community recognizes that this narrative tells us who we are, and when people hear pieces of it, they recognize where it goes, just like saying, "Once upon a time," or "In a galaxy far, far away," or maybe "Find your happy place." How about this one? MIC. Yep, you guys are a spiritual bunch. I thought so. Knock, knock. You've been shaped by the stories of our culture. But ours is a better story. It starts with God setting up a garden to stage a wedding before Eve's parcels-tongued episode, where she and Adam were able to find out that God would open up the first leather goods store. And then their son, he couldn't handle the consequences of his jealous actions, and God put him in that murderer in the first witness protection plan. And then when evil, threatened by lies and murders, started to take over the whole earth, God rescued an entire family and all kinds of animals, even the creepy ones, to keep the promise made to that first couple that one day a child of theirs would overcome all of evil in the world. And when people decided again to make a name for themselves, as if being named transcript of the Trinity, being named a birthmark as made in the image of holiness wasn't a good enough name. God decided that this story would then be told by one particular nation. You know, if somebody calls you a dirtbag, say, "Yeah, you are." God labored over a lump of clay and gave you a birthmark. You are good, very good. So pay attention to the story, because God likes to turn to drama to get our attention. Fiery furnaces and big fish, famine and flood, and even festivals where prostitutes and tax collectors and priests will sit down at a table where every nation and language group will break bread and drink wine between music sets. And if you're thinking Las Vegas and casinos with communion ware, go ahead, because we'll be humming, "We will understand it better by and by." And if you don't believe me, I'm not making this up. Go back, read Daniel 5, and then read the account of the wedding in Cana, and then read the vision of John in Revelation 21. This is a cosmic story that demands a sequel. Thousands of years later, we continue to read the ancient equivalent to Facebook. When we read the written transcripts of Isaiah's spoken message to the PDF files of Paul's letters, they're all ancient blogs that were originally the ancient equivalent to their technological advancement called writing, a book. But we need to remember that this story is not our story. It's God's story. It's the story that tells us that God is good and that God is great and that God hasn't given up on the world, and that the best way to understand God is to look at the life of Jesus. And that's why we're called Christ-like, little Christ, Christian. I'm here to remind you that we are a story-formed people. We've not been given rules and tips. We have this revelation from our Creator who hasn't given up on us, even though we keep walking out of the story He's writing. So stop arguing over whether or not backsliders were ever saved. Do we really have to argue about how much makeup a Christian girl should wear? I think the answer is kind of simple. It depends on her face. Go back, read the script, not to be able to remember lines to throw at people as a weapon, but so that you understand the story that is telling you who you are and whose you are. Because remember, we are the story that we tell. And this ancient story is our story. It works in our virtual reality. It enables us to know our story so that we can be a demonstration of the story written by God, edited by Jesus Christ, and empowered by the Holy Spirit. These ancient words are not just my words. They're God's words. They're God's story for a soundbite world. Allow your life to be a video clip of what God is doing in the world to make things very good. Thank you.